one more piece for you here, guys, which broke yesterday. We have been covering, of course, the possibility of a mass rail strike. To walk you back through this, because this is a complicated process, it's governed by special railway labor law, which is why this process is a little bit different. You had something like 12 unions that represent railroad workers. They were looking at striking because during the pandemic, even before the pandemic, they have just been getting completely screwed. These rail bosses cut a bunch of the workforce. They shifted all the workload onto these workers. They were getting no time off. They couldn't go to doctor's appointments. Some of them were dying on the job. I mean, just horrific, horrific circumstance. So they draw a line and say, we have to do something about it. So the first thing that happens is Biden appoints a presidential board to review, what the proposals are and come up with a deal. That initial deal, terrible. Gave nothing to the workers in terms of the legitimate standard of living concerns that they have about, just the inability to take any time off whatsoever, even when they're sick. Okay, so they say no to that. Then we're coming down to the wire with a possibility of either these workers going on strike or the rail companies locking them out. Either one would obviously be crippling to the economy. So Biden administration convenes the rail bosses and the union leaders, and they come to a tentative agreement, which is marginally better for workers, which includes like 1 day off instead of the no days off that they were getting previously. Okay, so the next step in the process is, guess what? The rank and file workers, they get a vote on this through their unions. Some of the smaller unions said, okay, well, we guess this is better than nothing, we take it. And the largest worker union, their members, majority of them said, no, this isn't sufficient. This is still ignoring the legitimate concerns and needs that we have. So this puts another ticking clock in place, which was set to expire in early December. So what is the Biden administration going to do? They have a couple of options. One is to let it play out. One is to let workers using their leverage. They were going to have, all of the unions are standing in solidarity together, put leverage on the bosses, try to strike a deal. Two is they have the option to go to Congress and force a deal on the workers and on the bosses. Well, we now know that President Biden, and Nancy Pelosi is backing him up, is calling for Congress to act and force down a deal on these workers. So then there's a question, okay, well, what deal? Because you could call for anything. It doesn't have to be the tentative agreement that workers have already rejected, but they're going with the tentative agreement, completely silencing the voice of all of these workers who through democratic means said this is not good enough, and siding completely here with the railroad bosses. And it is very disappointing and disturbing to see. Jonah Furman has been tracking all of this very closely. He has been compiling voices of the workers who are getting screwed here, and they are just absolutely apoplectic. Biden's statement he put out was like, oh, I'm so sorry to have to do this. I'm a pro-labor president, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, again, you have another choice, which is even if you say, listen, shutting down the railroads this is a disaster for the economy. We just can't let it happen. Okay, well then put a deal to Congress that includes the time off and the sick days that the workers are asking for. It really is not ultimately that hard. And as I said, Pelosi has already put out her own statement saying she's going along with all of this.
Yeah, I really do think it bears looking at the basic facts, which is, look, I mean, I think that these guys are very much negotiating in good faith. Like, all they wanted was to get sick time and leave, right? Like, that's it. And the deal that was negotiated at the table with Biden was not done in good faith by the rail companies. And based upon what I can see, Krystal, it's because the bosses, they feel no need to negotiate because they have the Railway Labor Act on their side.
Yeah, that's
they
right.
know that they have a supermajority in Congress, which is willing to back them and force a deal down these guys' throats if they want to.
They know that Congress is going to back capital at the end of the day. And Marty Walsh, by the way, the labor secretary, had already cut the legs out from under the workers by hinting that this was the direction that they were going to go in, which of course killed all of their leverage from the jump. I have the statement here from Biden. He says, I'm calling on Congress to pass legislation immediately to adopt the tentative agreement, again, the one the workers explicitly rejected, between railroad workers and operators. Let me be clear, a rail shutdown would devastate our economy. Without freight rail, many many U.S. industries would shut down. True, but that doesn't mean you have to push the tentative agreement that was rejected. He goes on to say, as a proud pro-labor president, I am reluctant to override the ratification procedures and views of those who voted against the agreement. But in this case, where the economic impact of a shutdown would hurt millions, I believe Congress must use its powers to adopt this deal. So I don't really care how you feel about it, Joe Biden. I care about what you are doing. And he tries to act like his hands are completely tied here and there was no other decision he could have possibly made. And it's a lie. And he has said he would be the most pro-labor president in history. I mean, again, Jonah Furman, he's got one rail worker who said, words cannot express how effing livid I am at this administration. Biden prides himself on how he cared for his family after tragedy. I could never do that because the people in power like him would rather screw workers than stand up to effing robber barons. Another says, many of my coworkers were Democrats that went to Trump and have not looked back. This just gives them more ammo. The Democrats don't care about us. Some other highlights from texts that Jonah was receiving. One said, he's a dickhead, effing loser, RIP Democrats. And then his commentary, the Dems wonder why they're losing the working class.
Yeah.
So there you go.
No, I mean, I'll just reiterate something I've read here before. Of the 7 major railways based in the United States, combined net income of $27 billion is up from $15 billion a decade earlier. Over the past decade, 6 of the 7 railways that are publicly traded have paid out $146 billion in stock buybacks and dividends, which is over $30 billion more cash than they invested in their business, including their workforce, of which has shrunk at the same time that they're rewarding their shareholders on Wall Street. I think this is fundamentally insane. I believe in private and private negotiations between workers and the bosses. And if they don't want to work, the U.S. government should not force you to. That is as dystopian as it gets, especially when you have a court. I mean, can you imagine being forced to go back to work by the government?
I mean,
That's
we really need the Railway Labor Act to be overturned because, I mean, that at bottom is the problem here, is giving them this out. And then, if you're the rail bosses, you know, whether it's a Democratic Congress or a Republican Congress. The Republicans were ready to go with the original presidential board agreement, which was even worse. Whether it's a Democratic or Republican Congress, when push comes to shove, they're going to side with capital, even if you are the president who claims to be the most pro-labor in history. Bullshit. Yeah. Total bullshit.
It's not. It's just not right. It really isn't.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.